Hello, Daisy.
Hello, Shira.
How are you this week?
It's fabulous. How about
Yeah,
yourself? Uh-huh.
same. It's a good day. So far
So far,
it's a good day.
good. It's been a crazy week, but all very productive. So hope yours
Good.
was okay. Good.
Same. We'll get into it. I love it. I want to welcome everyone to the Glass House, where we look at business from the inside and the outside to expose the gap between what's embedded and what's actually embodied. I am Shara Halixer. I am the founder and chief momentum officer of Engage 3P.
And I'm Daisy. And I'm Daisy Watkins, founder of DW Concepts and LumaPath.ai.
You got to get that going. If you are here today, I say this every week now, we want to thank you. We know you have lots of options and you chose to be here with us, and we don't take that lightly. Thank you, whether you're live or just taking your time to watch a recording. We really appreciate it. And before we go any further, I want to say that we love reading your comments throughout the episode. Drop us your questions, share your reactions, tell us what you're thinking. We will put them on the screen if it makes sense, and we want to respond, and we want to make this a conversation, not a broadcast. So we really want to hear from you. Please let us know where you're from. Heather's already saying hi. Hello, Heather. Thank you. Okay, here's a question. We're going to kick this off because we have so much to talk about and we always go over, and I'm not going to do that. So here's a question that organizations almost never ask out loud. When your hiring manager walked into that last interview, were they trying to find the best person for the job, or were they trying to avoid making a mistake? That's a big one, right? Think about that for just a moment. They are not the same. It's not the same question. And the answer changes everything.
Well, from where I sit, the cost of that confusion is not just internal. When an organization's hiring decision consistently diverge from its slated talent strategy, AI reads that pattern. It shows up. It shows up in how your employer brand is characterized externally, in whether the candidates you find at all, and are and in whether your organization appears to know what it actually wants. So the gap is visible long before anyone inside the company names it. That's kind
Yeah.
of interesting.
Yeah, it's true. And those numbers are really backing it up. So get this one. 74% of employers admit 74% they have hired the wrong person for a position. Nearly half of all new hires fail in 18 months.
That's pretty high, but here's another part. Here's the part that most hiring conversations skip entirely. 89% of those failures have nothing to do with technical skills. Okay, think about
Right.
that. They're about attitude, and we know this, fit and cultural alignment, which means organizations are screening for the wrong signals and missing the real ones entirely.
Well, and yet the way most organizations respond to that track record is to double down on the same model. They hire the person with the biggest resume, the biggest name, the most recognizable track record. That feels safe. We spent years on the other side of that equation. I had a company actually, let me rephrase, that pursued me for over 4 months. It was a real opportunity. Every stage they said, "This is great. We love you. You're amazing." And the references went unfollowed. The calls were missed. They didn't respond. It was a mess from the inside out. When they finally came back after all of that, after they made the offer, we negotiated on salary, they rescinded the offer. They told me I was too overqualified for the job. They were clearly not hiring, for the best outcome. They were hiring to avoid what might have been looked at like as a bad call, and that's a risk model. And I couldn't believe it. I was in shock.
Well, go ahead, Shira. Sorry, I didn't
No,
mean to.
that's it. That's
So
it.
imagine what's going on right now, like with all the layoffs that are going on. So this is really playing out externally in real time, right? At so
Mhm.
many different levels in organizations right now. So candidates are researching companies through AI before they even apply. They are asked what it's actually like to work there. What do people say when they leave? What are the patterns that they see when companies hire and promotes? AI synthesizes all of it. And if the internal decisions makers are inconsistent, that inconsistency becomes part of how your organization is characterized to every single candidate they're considering. So similar to what you experienced, Shira.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So the question is not how do we avoid a bad hire, right? Which is what we're talking about. The question is what gives us the highest probability of a great one? And those are completely different questions, and they produce completely different decisions. That is what I like to call the embedded versus embodied problem. And that's exactly what we are talking about today, right? What's going on in all of this. So our guest today, I'm getting a little feedback there. Our guest today has spent more than 15 years inside global talent acquisition. We worked together a number of years ago, which was great. He has been at some of the largest organizations. He actually founded the Mergers and Acquisition Assimilation team at Oracle, where he watched firsthand how acquisition value disappears when the people side of the deal is really left unmanaged. And I talk about the people side all the time. And then he did something nobody else had done. He did not build another ATS. We didn't need one. He did not build another sourcing tool. We didn't need one. He built a platform called HireBrain, designed specifically for the person who has always been the most important and the most forgotten participant in the entire hiring process. Ready for this? The hiring manager.
Ooh.
Right? Exactly. David Nason, welcome to the Glass House.
I love the applause. Thanks, guys. That's what happens every meeting that I join. People
You
start
get
clapping,
applause?
you know.
God, I love it. I love it. It always freaks me out too. It's really funny. That's great.
That's pretty cool.
We're actually all here coming from HR and recruiting world. So this is going to be fascinating and so timely. So a lot
Very
to talk
cool.
about.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
It's entirely my pleasure, my friend. So did we get it right? You want to tell us if we said what we said was spot on?
Yes, you did get it right. That was the thesis. I think that in my experience, at the end of the day, it's the hiring manager who has the problem, right? To be solved. And I think that they're far too often left out of the equation, certainly in solutions. And so that's exactly why we created HireBrain, and we started as a solution specifically for hiring managers to help them to make high probability hires. And then we grew into a hiring enablement platform for CHROs, heads of HR, heads of TA, to up-level every participant in the hiring cycle all around the world, globally, in an environment built on neuroscience. So from the behavior of the platform to people's experiences with it and so on is tuned to the way that human beings actually, think and operate, which is very different than lots of technology. Let's be real.
So having spent 712 years in recruiting, I used to say, first of all, people hire the way they date. Let's just think about that for a moment. I can honestly say when I was in staffing, I had a number of marriages that came out of the placements that I made. I'm going to also say it was not my fault that some of them might have been married to someone else at the time. That's not my fault. But so I take no ownership of that. But I think it makes sense, right? Because you think about it, right? You meet them for the first time. You think, oh, let's have a coffee. Let's have a drink, right? I like you. I want to see you again, right? What is it though about the hiring manager? Because typically that starts in recruiting, starts in HR. The HR person, the recruiting person is doing that first SWAC at who's the right person. And now we can talk about what that means from an ATS perspective, from an AI embedded ATS, perspective. But by the time it gets to that hiring manager, there's been such a filter already imposed. I would assert they're losing out potentially on a lot of great people. So where do you fit in that whole cycle?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I'll say is that the closest social human behavior to interviewing is dating. So your comparison there is dead on, and that's the reality of the human experience. I think that well, I would say a couple of things. I think that the core, if you will, documents and information by which we typically advertise and recruit and screen candidates is not a high probability model for success.
Agreed.
A laundry list of things that people want to see in a candidate. Typically, the way that we describe a job, jobs aren't very well. Let's be honest. Job descriptions do not describe the job, right?
No.
You mentioned some statistics earlier about the probability of hiring success. Well, it's also true that 70+% of people report 6 months into their new position that the job they're doing and the team that they work for and their boss is materially different than what was described during the interview process.
Right.
So if we are finding and submitting candidates that they don't have a high probability of success, my argument would be, and this isn't just me, this is for sure. I mean, I'm rogue in some ways, but if I'm going to advocate it as something that would actually be helpful to human beings in the workplace, which is my MO on this planet, I would say that it is not their fault. It's not their fault. It's not the hiring manager's fault. It's not the candidate's fault, not the recruiter's fault necessarily. There are bad actors and things like that, and people don't take the job seriously. Without a doubt, that is true. But it is typically because very few hiring managers. I mean, I don't know about you guys, your experiences, but we get promoted into management because we've been a high-performing individual contributor, right? And then oftentimes, this was my experience, the first thing you're asked to do is replace yourself.
Right.
Right. So we're going into it. All we have is our own assumptions and intuitions about what might work. When you talk about risk, hiring being viewed as a risk, first-time managers typically don't see it that way. They don't see it as a risk. It's usually after you've had some experience that you view it as a risk because you're like, oh my gosh, this isn't what I thought I was getting into. You know what I mean? And so, our position is that we need to fundamentally describe roles in a way that is more productive and conducive to success, and describe ourselves as well as managers, and have that information on the job description. Have it on the job description. What am I being measured against? Right? What is it? What's my time horizon look like? Where do I need to be in my first 30, 60, 90 days, 6 months, at 12 months and beyond 12 months? Who am I as a manager? It's funny because at first people hesitate to describe themselves, in very real terms. And then the light switch goes off. It's like every challenge that we can say, interpersonal challenge that we're talking about work, right? So interpersonal challenges at work, right? That whatever percentage of folks, it comes from unmet expectations, right? Yeah. Every lawsuit, but it's also because those are a high percentage of the time, they're unarticulated expectations.
That's so interesting. Go ahead, Daisy. You were going to ask something.
I just recall one of my positions. I got, high performer. I was a high performer. I was being visible to management and corporate. And so the opportunity came where, okay, we're going to move you now to the next level. And then one of the cool things with that particular promotion, anyway, within the same organization, mind you, I've been there for over a decade. So I've seen transitions on how they do things. But this one particular wave of management or corporate people, one of the initiatives from the HR department, who was somebody new, was they had a program for everybody that got promoted within that year, within that quarter or that half the year. They had a course that you had to attend throughout the organization, virtually, called From Peer to Boss. From peer to read that book, right? And so that was really helpful for a lot of us. So if your organization also has those programs, it helps kind of elevate. To your point, David, is like we are lost, right? Some of these people don't have previous management experience, or perhaps some of them have, but just never in this particular organization. So it's a hit and miss. But to your point, are you seeing organizations offer that as well to support those that they've elevated to that level?
Daisy, you're going to get me into trouble right now.
Good. We like that. That's fantastic.
Who's watching this thing?
I hope a lot of people.
No, I'll tell you what, I think it was, if we go back to 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I think that, that there was still variance in terms of companies who embraced, training, enablement, right, learning experiences, as a core, a success, principle. And I think that today we have a lot of forces that are fighting against us, right? The pace of change, the perception of pace of change is far greater than the actual pace of change in many cases. But because it feels like we're constantly under the gun, right? And we don't know what's happening next, and we don't understand what's gonna, we have a challenge. Human beings, we are wired, we want order, right? We want understanding. But the world is chaotic. And today people feel like it's more chaotic than ever. So if it's chaotic, right, and we are under extreme pressure to change and do new things and capture, et cetera, well, when do we have time to do training?
Right.
When do we have time to do training? So I would argue that it's sorely needed. We know these things are true. We've been studying human performance in the workplace for 100 years, right?
Right.
The human brain has been around for 70,000 years, our modern human brain. So, and we change, but we don't change that much. So the same things are true today that were true 50 years ago. And those principles for success in an organization are true today. And I think that, returning to something that is helpful to us as humans, it's a good thing.
You talk about the idea that someone gets promoted into a role because they're a great performer and then they become a manager. Did anyone really question whether or not they were capable, whether they wanted to be? We've had this discussion before, right? Is that person really prepared, to your point, Daisy, to do that role at any level, much less at the hiring level? I'm having a conversation right now with a client of mine who's saying we're really focused on succession. And that's also hiring, right? And so the notion of who we have in key roles, and we're going to dig into this a little bit in a few minutes with our outside story in, but the idea of who do we think we need to put in those roles? So having been in the HR technology space for so long, clients would say to me, we want succession planning. And I would always say, fantastic, because that's the end of the marathon, right? In terms of building technology. So what data do you have to support that in order to get the information that you need to know who falls in the boxes? And typically there was nothing. And they wanted magic. They wanted to know who's going to be our next CEO, who's going to do that. And I think having you and I having talked about this and getting into this now, to me, what's also missing is the understanding of what do we really need in this organization, right? What is the role? What is the expectation of that role? What are the responsibilities of that role? What fits well in that role and in this team? And that's a really difficult thing to understand. And if that's not being considered, there's not going to be great success. And so I find it so interesting that they don't have those conversations, right? There's just here's a job description, put it on the ATS, let's get it out there, let's figure it out. Give it to a recruiter, let's find the person. And then they wonder why it doesn't work. So, I'd love to understand from your perspective and what you're doing with HireBrain to try to change that and try to make that better.
Yeah. So I'd say a couple of things. So one of them is that, we make decisions based on mental models, heuristics, right? And those heuristics are learned over time. Personal experience, other people's experiences, we read something, etc. The strongest ones are our own personal experiences or something that we were well taught, if you will. So, what I talk about all the time is shifting the paradigm from a rearward-facing view of a job, a laundry list of things that we want to see in a candidate, to a forward-facing view of a job. And if you do that, we shift the way that we think from risk to opportunity. from risk to probability. Because if we articulate what the objectives of the role are, how those are tied to specific business objectives, how we're going to measure those things, the business challenges that we need to solve for by hiring, new things that we could create by hiring, and actually create a time-bound plan of success according to those strategic objectives. And we articulate and describe ourselves and our teams really, really well, we move into probability. It feels hard because we haven't done it before.
Right.
But it is so much more fun to do that than to try to write a job description.
Oh, Lord, yes.
People agonize over those things. I'll give you another cheat code for succession plans. Who wants to fill out a good succession plan?
Nobody.
Nobody does, right?
Nobody does.
Nobody does. We have to have a succession. Should we have a succession? What if it's not from within the organization? Again, I would offer the opportunity to shift it from, because that's a risk model. Who's the person I'm putting in the seat? What's the risk to me personally? My career, my job, my financial security, etc. The thing I worked so hard for all these years. That's all risk. And human beings, we make choices to avoid risk far more often than we make choices to gain something new, or some positive benefit, right? Yeah. So I would advocate, again, let's shift the way we think about succession plans to where does this company need to be in 12, 18, 36 months from now, right? What is it's interesting that there are, we put out strategy, et cetera, but then we leave it up to individuals to figure out how to convert organizational company strategy into a hiring need, right? That's hard to do. You know what I mean? It is hard to do. Of course, I would advocate super easy to do in HireBrain. But even just thinking about it is helpful. Like, oh, that's interesting, right? So as opposed to hiring to avoid something, if we're hiring to achieve something, again, we're going to shift that mental model. The way that we attract candidates, evaluate candidates, right? And then ultimately onboard candidates. Those are your three opportunities, by the way. And that's true for succession planning too. How are we defining success for the role? What's the evaluation process like? And then the onboarding.
Succession planning is nothing more than internal recruiting, right? That's exactly what we're doing.
Well, to your point, David, you said something very, very interesting that caught my attention, is that, let's reverse the way we think about this. Like our culture has changed, the type of organizations have changed, the way we do business have changed, technology, AI in particular, is causing fear for a lot of employees right now, right? Like, I'm going to be displaced. So there's that other part of that you need to worry about. But my point is, when you said, let's reverse the way we look at things, let's look at I'm always going to bring back generation, because it's a reality that we have to face and managers have to face. So if you look at what's going to happen 36 months from now, 36 months from now, if we look at it that way, from where we're sitting right now with AI and technology, that's really, I think, because you're going to look at who's going to be in those spots with all the generations that are coming out, that are graduating from college. What are their jobs going to be like? They assume that after they got out of college that there's these jobs that are going to be in, they're going to land, right? Yeah. So there's a mind shift that now the displaced people also now have to think, how do I get in front of people? How do I advance with AI? So your candidate pool is also going to change in the skills that they have, to where you used to look for that spot to plan somebody for that succession. So are you seeing that trend, or what are your observations in that space right now when people are actually planning for it?
Well, I tell you what, I feel bad for the office of the CIO right now.
Really? Oh, interesting.
I do. Because ultimately, the burden of technology falls on them, right? So ostensibly, we make technology choices to improve something or gain something, right? Gain efficiencies, et cetera, effectiveness. That's, we buy it for these reasons, and then we use it and we get this. Oftentimes, that's a little bit mean. Sorry, friends out there in the tech.
It's reality, David.
Right.
So you take AI, right? And what's all the messaging in and around AI? Efficiency, right? We buy AI, we're going to be able to displace people. We're going to be able to, there's this checkbook thing I heard for the first time when I moved to the South from Boston, which is, if you want to know what somebody cares about, look at their checkbook. Well, if you take the checkbook of a company, it's people. There's people there. So if we can save money, right, we want to save money. Now, forget about the operational risk that's created by that. So when I think about this is my experience, and not just my own, but I'll just share my own because you asked that question.
Yeah.
We have, our pipeline is today full of companies that 6 months ago were going to do it on their own, and it failed. We've been sold that the large language models, right, these AI models are going to solve all of our problems. And then overnight, all of a sudden, every human being on planet Earth is going to become a genius engineer, an AI engineer, and be able to build these prompts that we go and people are putting them on LinkedIn. And it's like, there's people are so hungry for them. It's like, post whatever, I don't know, some word in the comments and I'll send you my Claude model. And it's like, whatever they have, I'll just say, I don't know, blue. And it's like blue, 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 blue. And the problem is, well, what did your company buy? Do they have OpenAI? Is it Gemini? Is it Cohesity, et cetera? All brilliant, beautiful platforms that do lots of awesome stuff. But most of us aren't engineers.
Right.
I had my tech friends, somebody said to me recently, they were like, the thing is engineers, okay, for years, we think everything's changed. If you were a React engineer, okay, you spend a significant amount of your time in life on GitHub and a variety of other places, learning and understanding the latest models of React. Okay, you have, and so how do they work, etc. You're constantly educating yourself about those things. But everyone doesn't think that way. Everyone doesn't learn that way, right? So how is it possible we're going to spend 40% of our day, 20% of our day learning how the model works to get the best use case out of it, right? And the thing that's been bothering me, because I am, I call recruiting, those are my people in a lot of ways, they're at risk today and they're being sold these tools that are the most simple callback to a large language model at a very high level individual, I'll say, who was screened by 5 different recruiter bots from 5 different companies. Same exact questions, same response to given questions. And the 5th one was my favorite because it said at pharma company. It didn't even have the company name in there.
No.
So if we think about that for a second, what does that actually mean? And you sure your question earlier, right, about are the right candidates, getting through the process. So I think we need to be a little bit more, thoughtful. I'm just going to, my thing right now is we have an opportunity, and part of that opportunity is the way that we make our choices, our choice architecture, right? The series that's like, what are we trying to accomplish? Given the fact that there's an unknown, right? Chart that out first, what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and then make decisions and technology choices based on what it is that you're trying to accomplish, versus all of the exciting stuff that's put out there.
The shiny toy. But what do you think it takes? I mean, I know it from a change perspective, right? But specifically for a hiring manager, what is it going to take for them to change their behavior, right? The way that they look at things, the way that they participate in this process, right? Have you seen that change happen as you start working with them? I mean, do you get connected at that level, or are you working with more senior HR people?
Yeah, no, we do. I mean, we see a lot of exciting behavior when it's an offer to here's one way I think about it is like, if you're going to go on vacation, right? You're going to plan every aspect of it. Where you're going to go? What are you trying to do? Do you want a beach vacation? Whatever else. Okay. You do all of those things, you plan whatever, and your probability of getting that outcome is significantly different than if you just got on an airplane. We would never do that. Right. But when we hire, okay, we're hiring again. We're not planning for future success. We're hiring to avoid risk. And I have a friend of mine said something I've been saying it a lot recently, that there's two kinds of risk. There's operational risk and there's financial risk.
Right.
And you don't want to take financial risks. You want to take operational risks. That's possibility, right? Financial risk is hiring to avoid something. Operational risk is hiring, to gain something, if that makes sense. And so audiences are super receptive to that because, you know what? It feels good too. It gives me such a, we want security, right?
Sure.
We want a sense of our feet under, ground under our feet and so on, be able to feel it, so on, right? So by giving somebody something that gives them a more of a feeling and actual fact of security in what's going to happen in the future, people love that. They love it.
So
I'm good. Good.
Just thought, it's like,
Yeah.
I talk in paragraphs. I'm sorry. I should.
No, it's good. It's so good.
So Shira, I want to address a couple of questions we have on our comments, if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
I love that. Sure.
So I'll bring up, Heather has a few loaded questions. We might have answered some of these already. So I put it up on the screen there. So you want to read it? Sure.
Yeah, sure. Why does the high performer have to be promoted to the next role? Why can't they be acknowledged for their stellar performance in their own lane, getting even better in what they're already doing? So 1,000%, Heather. Why is it that we so historically go, you're great here, so we're going to put you here whether you want it or not, right? Again, that kind of speaks to what are we doing?
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. I love that. I think that I don't have the statistic in front of me, but probably fairly easy to find the percentage of accidental managers, people who didn't seek the role, who were given the role, cajoled. They were voluntold into management. Man, that's just brilliant. I think that even when internal, I've seen, I don't know how many internal mobility programs, and the progression is, IC1 to manager. Well, they don't all want to be managers. I know a lot of people who've gone into management and leadership and then gone to become an individual contributor. And that's the career and the work that they enjoy, the most. So I think the paradigm that a manager, becoming a manager, becoming a leader, is the ultimate goal. I think is challenging. I mean, being a manager is hard. It's hard. Yeah. And I mean, I would argue that your role as a manager, as a leader, is to create an environment that's conducive to success, to hold people accountable in a way that's supportive of achievement, if you will, right? And to train all the time. I saw a name from one of my former recruiters on here. And we used to not only in the beginning of your job do you train, but every quarter, right?
100%.
We would go back to the principles, I mean, that's how great sports teams do the things that they do, and great athletes, because they train all the time. The event is right. I mean, I don't love sports analogies. I'm not really a sports guy myself.
No, but it's very true.
Sense. It just makes sense. Spring
training, summer training for football. They're out there. These are the premier athletes in their field, and yet they're still training all the time. Yeah. I think it's interesting too. I was very fortunate. I had a mentor when we were at Infor. I don't know if you were there yet, but I had this amazing mentor for a while. And I went to him and I said, how do I grow in this company? How, where am I going to go in this company? And he said to me that I needed to figure out what I was willing to give up in the role that I'm in now. And he said, what do you like about what you're doing? And I said, well, I love the client engagement. That is everything. I love being on site with them. I love getting to know them. He said, you're not going to do that as an executive. Maybe once in a while you'll see them, but that's not going to be a role at the upper echelon level of the organization, because it's not that, right?
Yep.
And when I was in recruiting, and I'll never forget, it was so funny. I was placing lawyers. And I was in New York, everyone came to me and they said, I want to work in entertainment. Young lawyer, I want to work in entertainment. And I said, you're not having dinner with Madonna, okay? You're going to sit in a cubicle and you're going to redact contracts all day long. Like, you're not going out with Beyonce. Like, that's not happening. And it's managing expectations, right? And to your point in the beginning, it's understanding, what is that role? What are you really going to do? Don't sell someone a bill of goods. Tell them exactly what the day-to-day is going to be about and what they're going to be expected to accomplish, because, you know, that's the reality.
Yeah. And beyond a task perspective. So
Right.
I'll tell you that, like, your statistic about new hires that don't work out, there's another statistic that's even worse, which is success in role is about 30% on average. And that, part of that's because the way that we define success in role is performance, engagement, and satisfaction. So the engagement part, it's not just the tasks, but how does this job contribute to business outcomes?
Right.
How am I the things that I do every day, right, going to result in a positive business outcome? And if we think in that way, every single job matters. Everything matters. It doesn't matter what you're doing, from frontline customer support to finance or in security or in legal. I guess you're talking about in law, right? Like, being in that cubicle all day long, like, is what I'm doing contributing to the success of the artists that are signed to us? Is that what I'm thinking about? Does that make sense? It's like a little ad that makes all the difference in the world.
Well, and I think what makes a great organization is valuing that, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's the person that cleans the bathrooms and delivers the food and takes care of the conference rooms, all the way to the CEO, right?
Yep.
Everybody is contributing something to make it work, and the value of that individual is paramount to the greater success. If any of those pieces fall down, it doesn't work.
That's right. Yep.
And so, I mean, how many of us have, I think about it all the time. How many of us have planned, clients are coming in, we're going to have the conference room all set up. It's going to have the food. It's going to be great. They're going to be impressed, blah, blah, blah. And something breaks down. The kitchen doesn't work, or the food doesn't show up, or something happens, and it's a disaster. Right. And I think that great organizations understand that wholly. They realize that every contribution is valuable, not just at the top.
That's right. That's right. And great companies do that. And I think, like, to again, to reiterate, I guess, the point earlier, but that Heather made, is that, if we're thinking that way, then we can have a system, a mechanism by which to reward great individual contributors beyond a promotion into management, right? Like, how did this organization, there's no awards for finance. No. I mean, let's be real. Sales, okay, it's obvious. We have a measuring stick. We all get it. You made it, you didn't make it. You made it a lot. You get to go up on stage, you get a thing, and you made a ton of money or whatever else. But what about IT? Who's cheering for them? You know what I mean? I mean, who's cheering for recruiting? I mean, let's be honest, right? Like,
Right.
I shouldn't say this, but a buddy of mine says that he says they treat us like toilet paper. They only care if we're not there. And I'm like, yeah, wow, that's a little provocative, but it makes sense too, right? What about what about these other organizations?
Right. Everybody's valuable. I want to make sure we get the story. And Daisy, do you want to help me introduce our outside story in today? Because I think it's going to hit home on everything we've talked about, and then we can bring this in and kind of get it started.
Absolutely. Let me cue that in. Thanks, Shira. Okay.
Yeah,
so
my pleasure.
We bring in a story every week from the outside room, because the glass house is not just about our own experiences. It's actually about what's happening out there and to the people watching this. This week, we found a story we could not put down. So, Shira, you want to take the story?
Yeah. So this is an unbelievable story that I found, David, and I think you're going to know it. And just nod your head immediately, because I'm going to just read this over. It was in 2011, JCPenney's board needed to turn the company around. So it was 15 years ago, right? And they had one shot to get it right. And they went out and hooked what they thought was the safest hire in retail history. Ron Johnson, straight from Apple. Do you know this one? Are you familiar with this one?
Yeah.
Where he built the entire Apple Store ecosystem, right? Highest performing retail concept in history, proven track record, household name, board not being careless, right? Said they're being careful. They hired the ultimate rock of all rocks when it comes to retail. There is no risk in this hire. 17 months later, Johnson was gone. Didn't last 18 months. Sales were down 4.3 billion at JCPenney. Stock dropped more than 50%, and the board brought back the prior CEO. Now, here's what matters for this conversation in my mind. Did the board ask what the probability of success will be based specifically on the context of the customer base, their culture, and their competitive position versus Apple? They didn't ask those questions. They asked one question: how do we avoid looking like we made a bad decision? And the question produced one of the most expensive hiring failures in retail history, right? And so one would think it's logical if I've got somebody at retail who's made great success, but guess what? Who would ever, I mean, and I have to believe, who would ever think JCPenney, 100-plus-year-old retailer, kind of not low end, but lower end in terms of scale, versus Apple? Just from a cultural perspective, it doesn't make any sense. And I worked at JCPenney one summer in high school, right? So,
Yeah.
So I think that that's such an interesting story because it really kind of brings together everything that we've talked about. I'm avoiding risk, right? I'm hiring the guy that makes retail sing and makes it amazing. And it's a colossal failure.
Yeah. You know what is interesting to me? So human beings, we appreciate and admire other people's skills and abilities and gifts more than we do our own.
100%.
So we describe things in a way that are based a lot of times on those things that we admire in others. So that's a perfect case in point there, right? Like, how much do you love JCPenney? You need to turn around the business, right? First, you need to fall in love with that business. There's a beautiful story, maybe it's a year old, I'm not sure exactly, about the new CEO for Chili's.
Oh.
All of these, it's like fast casual dining. I forget exactly what the category is, something like that, right? So every other brand, don't yell at me, companies. I always get like a LinkedIn message from somebody who gets mad. I love you too. But if you look at the success of, we're in that category is dropping, Chili's is going crazy. Well, this is kind of crazy. This is totally insane. Do you know what he chose to focus on? Do you know who he spoke to? The people in the kitchen. He focused on the food.
Nice.
And people were saying, that, we get these pickles in these massive jars and we put our hands in them and, it's cheaper because of whatever else. Well, you know what but these other pickles make the sandwich taste totally better and they're in smaller packages. You know what he found out? Not only do they taste better, make the product better, but they were less expensive. Those big, huge things of pickles or whatever were inefficient. They were expensive. The shipping was worse. Everything was worse about it. But somebody somewhere was like, a bigger package of pickles is going to save us money. That is what?
Wow.
That's a financial, when you think about like a financial risk versus an operational risk. An operational risk is, how are we going to get people to come into Chili's and then come back every time? Because we all have done this in restaurants. You go to a restaurant 5 times, it's awesome. You go one time and it's terrible. What are the chances? Right?
Yeah.
Now, I don't know. I don't follow the story intimately, so maybe that's not continuing. Maybe people have bad experience with Chili's, but I think the example holds true and is very similar to what you described with JCPenney. Like, who are we? What have we got to offer? Right? Who's our customer? And are we caring about that customer? And that applies 1,000% to hiring choice and recruiting. Right? 1,000%. What do we have to offer, right?
Well, I would even say too that it's not even at the CEO level. If I'm somebody that works at the Genius Bar in Apple, right, and I want that kind of pace and I want that kind of interaction and I want that, am I going to be a great salesperson at JCPenney? Maybe not, right? Maybe the traffic isn't as good. Maybe I have to work like I had to in bridal or whatever, and I was like, I don't know anything about it's a whole different kind of environment. And so if we're so narrowly focused on certain things, this again goes back to, what are we looking for, right? What is it that we're trying to hire to achieve? What is the outcome that we want? And I would assert that as we have created technology that does the hard work of the filtering, I talk about this a lot. When I was at one of my law firms, we didn't have an ATS, or we had the beginnings of an ATS many years ago. And I would get paper resumes, right? And my poor assistants would have to literally answer every single one. Legally, we had to respond to every single one. So I would have in the newspapers or in the legal journals, we need a patent prosecution lawyer with 3 to 5 years of experience and a civil engineering degree, and you have to have law review, and you have to be at a top 50 law firm, law school, and blah, 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 blah. And I would get a stack this big of, I work at Target, not even a law degree, not even a high school diploma.
Yeah.
And so now, and that person had to take that piece of paper, print it out, stick it in an envelope, put a stamp on it, and stick it in the mail, right?
Yeah.
Now, all you have to do is this, right? Just sit there and go on LinkedIn and do this. Easy apply, and it's nothing. So now the burden is so enormous that they've got all of these gateways in place to screen things that are fairly esoteric, that may or may not be getting us to the right people. And then as that trickles down, are the right people getting through? I would say no. My experience is no. Our team here that, has joined us has said no. And it's frustrating for people looking for jobs now. And then for that hiring manager who's getting whatever's filtered through, how are they going to make the best decision, right? How are they going to know who the best candidate is in that whole process?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you think about the job description, if that does not describe the role and responsibilities in a way that's real and actual.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, all of these screening, and sourcing tools they're all going to break down. I think, and I know we made it easy to apply, and we hated Taleo. It took 17 years to get through an application, and I'm not necessarily advocating that we create a new form if you have to take 7 steps to get through but there is a better way that does, number one is articulate what those actual, not just roles and responsibilities like tasks, but what are we expecting people to accomplish on a time horizon?
I love that.
Yeah, sorry, David.
No, go ahead.
The soft skills are hard to communicate in a job description because it will still look like a task, right? Like a task as a job description. How do you mold that? But a lot of the things I'm getting coming from that space, like I've applied for all the jobs, it looks perfect and everything is perfect. It's a lot. Every word that they say is literally me. Why are they not looking at me? And then I have to give them the reality that there's also 1,000 of you that match that job description. So I don't advocate. I like the fact that it sorts through stuff, but the reality is we're bypassing a few things. Some might probably have some narrative on the cover letter, right, about how they fit that mold in the soft skills side. But are there ATS? Yeah, are there ATSs reading that part too? So aside from that, so this is kind of, we were talking about how the CEO kind of represents themselves. What do they do? So from the outside, where I'm looking for, I know if you've seen probably this recent trend, CEOs of burger chains are doing like the you know what I mean? So I see some reflection into what McDonald's started, where their CEO started going, "Oh, look at my burger. It was so flat, and he didn't even know what to call the burger. Our food," he called it called it very generic. And so again, the reputation has had effect. Who prepped that CEO that you need to be more engaged? This is the name of the product. This is what's in it. He basically, and so all these challenges came out, and then the outside then became their branding factor as well. How are the CEOs adapting to their food or their product or their service? The outside has something to do with that as well. So I just want to point that out.
Yeah.
That, David, was kind of a social media nightmare for McDonald's and Burger King. So the story was something about, if you Google it, you'll find it, but it was something about the McDonald's CEO was trying some new burger, and I don't know how they came up with the idea of doing it. And it was the way he ate it. He went to take a bite, like assuming this, and he went like that or something. And he said that's how he was, some weird way that he ate it. And the Burger King CEO came on and he took a Whopper and he went, and he bit into it. And this created chaos in the market, right? And the CEO of McDonald's was like, well, that's how my mother told me I need to eat in public. And he's trying to make excuses for it. And it's like, it's insane. But here we have a situation now where whoever knew who the CEO of McDonald's or Burger King was ever before? Who cared? It was Ronald McDonald and the Burger King guy. That's who ran the company. Like, who knew this stuff? And so I think, Daisy, if I may, I think your point is like, even at that level now, are we going to hire CEOs who have good social media presence, who have good cred on camera, who don't eat like this if they're going to be like, I mean, we say this every week. We love technology. We love AI. We use it every day. Claude was down today. We think it's great. Claude was down for a long time today. And what it has shifted in everything that we do, in every way that we approach things, I think it's phenomenal, and I think it's a little bit scary, right? And I mean, here we are sitting and having this conversation, in technology, for technology. It's quite unbelievable, really, when we look at how this all comes together now.
It is. My first reaction to that is, can't we have a little bit more fun? Like if I was coaching that CEO, I would have had them on TikTok the next day with a fillet of fish, taking that thing down. Like, you know what I mean? It's okay at McDonald's if you don't like hamburgers, because we have a fillet of fish that's awesome. So, anyway, can't we just have a little bit more fun? Like, does everything have to be doom and gloom? I think human, it's very human. Human beings it's interesting. Like our brains are wired to be lazy, but our bodies physiologically and neurologically, we want to work. And we want to work, we want to do something of value. And the best way that we receive values that has been recognized by others. Mm-hmm. So if we think about that, like, okay, our brains are wired to make as few strategic decisions as possible. Go look at some of my goofiness about talking about Kahneman and Tversky and so on, about system one versus system two thinking. System one thinking, this hard thinking, right? It burns a lot of energy, et cetera. So we want to do as little of that as possible and as many automatic decisions as possible. And we want to do something that's valuable, And if we think about things like that, so how do we change this paradigm? How do we create a system by which your choice architecture and a hiring decision and an employment decision is easy and makes sense, right? Versus difficult and challenging. You're walking into a situation, I don't know anything about this job. I don't know anything about this person that I'm meeting, okay? We have an interesting study, not publishable at this point. So, Science Magazine, don't call me up and yell at me to fact check this. But it is true that that both managers and candidates are both in the similar physiological and neurological state, and that's one that is fear-based and anxiety-based.
I would absolutely agree with that. No question.
We think of candidates having anxiety, but we don't think of hiring managers as having anxiety. And even if what we found that was interesting was even when hiring managers did not report that they felt anxious, that they felt nervous, et cetera, their brains told us differently.
Sure.
So why is that? Because we fear the unknown. I know very little about this person other than the resume, what was articulated to me, which is a formula that's old and should be dead. And I know nothing about this job other than what was on the job description. And it's an old formula. It's outdated. It is not useful anymore. And it should also be dead. But then the other factor is, you were talking about soft skills, Daisy, right? Soft skills here, soft skills there. we can do that. Like, you read soft skills. So everyone wants attention to detail, but what does attention to detail mean in this role at this company on this team? And why do we care about it?
Exactly.
Why do we care? If
Right.
you put something like that on a job description, if you put something like that as a specific screening question for somebody to ask about, if you put that in, and on, by the way, on everyone's interview guide, that's, by the way, built for that person, for their role that they're expected to play, versus a generic list of, I'm going to pull all these questions in and just, interrogate the heck out of somebody, or I'm not going to interrogate them all. I'm just going to talk the whole time. They were awesome. Yeah, no kidding. And I'm the worst at this as I'm blathering on here. But hopefully that the point kind of comes through here is we can be aspirational about like what we want to achieve as an organization, right? For sure. But when we need to be, it's most helpful to be practical when we're articulating what's this job? What does it need to do? What do these soft skills mean? One of my favorites, I did a session. HireBrain started as a training company, and we still do train, and I love in-person workshop style training. I'll never forget a CFO of a company. I'm totally unstructured, fluid communicator, blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh, okay. I said, do you meet with your team? Yeah. Do you do one-on-ones? Every week? Like, I'm a big idiot. You know what I mean? I am, but that's beside the point. And I said, no kidding. I said, well, describe for me, if I was going to have a one-on-one with you this week, what would my experience be? And he said, well, the night before, you're going to send me this form that's completed. And the first part of the conversation, we're going to go through all of the things, the information that's in the form. The second part of it, we're going to talk about, next week, next month, 6 months from now. And then, and I was like, oh, okay. I said, if you were just simply describe what you just described to me as, would you describe it as open and fluid, or would you use different words? And he was like, oh, okay. And I'm just like, here, if we know that, do we screen differently? We do. But also, and more importantly, human beings are way more malleable than we give ourselves credit for. Yeah. If you know what to expect in your boss, if you know that they are going to have a one-on-one, now maybe if you're totally not like that and you're like, oh my gosh, that makes me want to throw up, don't take the job, don't apply, you know what I mean? Do something else. But if you're like, okay, that's not really me, but I can do that.
It's so funny. It just came to mind for me. I worked with this incredible team a number of years ago, and this was one of my favorite teams I've ever had in my career. We were all country leaders. And our boss was tough. He was tough.
Yeah.
Okay. And one of the guys on the team was really, we were out having drinks one night, and he was really frustrated. And I said to him, dude, no names. I said, so simple. If you show up and you don't have the numbers, right? We were all in sales. If you don't know your numbers, if you don't have your information, he's gonna ream you out. It's really simple.
Yep.
You know exactly what he wants. He's not a mystery here. Because he said to me, he said, listen, get mad. I have, they may not be the numbers he wants to hear.
Right.
I may hear, listen, I'm not happy with this, but I've got him. When you go, I don't know how many, I don't know this, and I don't know. Right? It is simple, right? And that is the thing that I think is so incredible. Again, going back to the idea of, I think too, you talked about, talking to people. When we are good daters, when we are good relationship builders, when we are good in a room, right? We interview well, right?
Yeah.
We can, I'm going to tell this very funny, quick story. And I know we're running over time, and I hope you guys can stick around. I once did speed dating, and oh my God, this poor man was sitting across from me for 5 minutes, and I interviewed him for 5 minutes. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't talk. He just sat there. And I thought, first of all, why are you there? Like, every 5 minutes he had to go sit and talk to another woman, right?
Right.
But and it was the only thing keeping it going. Because otherwise, I don't know I didn't pay attention to what he was doing with the other people, but I just sat there and I'm like, okay, where are you from? What do you do? Da, 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 da. And I can get through the 5 minutes, right? And so I think that's so true to how we engage in that process. So I want to kind of bring it back to HireBrain for just a moment, because we are over now, and I want to make sure we get some information out here. And I'm going to, while you're talking about this, I'm going to put a little information up on the screen so people know how to reach you, both your LinkedIn profile on the right, and I hope, unless I'm seeing this backwards and I don't know, but the one with the HireBrain is the company and the other one is you. People can reach out to you. But tell us a little bit about kind of, how do they get in touch with you? What does it mean to work with HireBrain? Give us just kind of your high level on that one, if you would.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. So I guess there in the QR codes, etc., and my name, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm active on there. I think that as I shared, I think even kind of throughout the series here, as a platform that is focusing on supporting through TA leaders, through HR leaders, the success of their organizations by something that's easy and simple. It's easy. It makes things easy and simple because we provide actionable decision support and tools to do the thing that you need to do at your point of need throughout a hiring cycle. We started as a hiring enablement platform, and we're moving into the employee life cycle as well, because people are already using our technology for performance, for goals, for internal mobility, even though it wasn't built for that. Which and to me, it's incredibly rewarding. It's incredibly rewarding to walk into a room at a customer and have people who've been hired over the past year and a half. Oh, you're HireBrain, that job description, and that at the end of the day, like that's what makes me feel great. That human beings are getting value and enjoyment and having an experience with technology.
Amazing.
That's a beautiful thing. Are we perfect? Yeah, we're totally perfect. No, I'm just kidding. But we do care, and we show up. So
that's so cool. Well, Daisy, I'm gonna let you talk for a minute about us, because I've been talking a lot.
Well, here is how you can reach Shara and I. You can reach us on all these platforms that you see on the screen. We have LinkedIn, YouTube is also, by the way, simultaneously also live, going live on our YouTube channels. If you ever miss us here on LinkedIn, we're also on YouTube, but there's also a QR code. We do also have a workshop cohort number 3 coming up very, very soon. And so watch out for those posts, and you're going to get some emails from us if you're in our contact base, but it's meant to be to help you in a lot of different stages in where you are in your business. But go please check it out for the Glasshouse workshops and accelerator courses that we have. And I want to start by saying thank you so much for joining us, and I'll let Shara end the podcast as usual.
Oh God, thank you, David, my friend. It's fantastic. Thank you for your insight and for everything. I hope that we start hiring better. I hope we start, making better decisions, bringing people into jobs. There are a lot of people now, unfortunately, who are looking, especially in tech, with all these big layoffs that are happening.
Yeah.
But I wholly believe that there will be a turnaround. I wholly believe that they're going to see the mistake that they've made in some of these layoffs, and people will create other businesses, right? Because let's face it, if we don't have the people working, making the money to buy the things that other people are selling, the businesses are going to be gone anyway. So what difference does it make, right? I mean, it's kind of works that way, right? So
cool. Thank you.
It has been a pleasure, my friend. Thank you. I hope everyone reaches out to you and reaches out to us. We would love to have anyone who is in earshot. If you want to be on the Glass House, we'd love to have you. It's fun to have these great conversations. Feel free to reach out to us, and we will see you next week. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. All right, we'll see you soon.
Guys.
Bye-bye.